Hi, this is Comic Talk. I'm Josh, this is Drew, and we'll be discussing our poll list today for June 10th. We have a bunch of Bat Family stuff for you this week. It's Detective Comics number 41, Batman number 41, and Catwoman number 41. So we'll start off today with Detective Comics number 41. Drew, what's the name of this guy?
Buccellato, I think, or Buccellato.
Buccellato.
Something kind of Italian, right?
Right. Manapul, and art by Blanco. In the past, usually when these guys are working together, they're doing the art, the two writers, right?
My only experience with those two has been the Flash run that they just got done doing. They did a bunch of New 52 Flash. And I believe on that, Buccellato was the writer, and Manapul was he the colorist, or did he do the art?
I thought he did pretty much all of it, was my understanding.
The coloring, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a little bit of a departure for them, at least in my experience, having this Blanco fella do the art. So what happened in this comic here?
Gordon has, when this begins, already accepted the position of Mecha Bat. We saw it in the events of Endgame, the end of Batman 40. Batman is killed, and they come up with this Mecha Bat suit in the meantime, and they want it to be a state-run, police-run, sort of Batman within the system, I guess, instead of the Batman outside of the system. They really enjoy the idea of Batman as a concept. You know, they're really hoping that it'll kind of inspire hope in the system instead of making people feel like the system's not working for them, which is, you know, really the kind of situation that created the need for Batman in the first place, is because the system was broken. After that, it kind of flashes back in time a little bit, and Bullock is looking for Batman right after he dies, because he doesn't believe he's actually dead. The new commissioner pulls him into her office and says, look, you know, I let you do this because, you know, I know you guys were pretty close. I thought it would help you with the grief and stuff like that, but it's been too long, and so you either need to get on this Mecha Bat project or you need to go back into rotation. And he's not really having the Mecha Bat thing, so he says, put me back in rotation. So later on, there's a lot of dialogue between him and his partner Yip, which they introduced a bit ago in Detective Comics. Montoya comes back. She was in Bloodhaven. Immediately tries to get Bullock to join the Bat team because she is on the Bat team. And so Bullock says, all right, if you get Yip reinstated, take her off security duty, I'll do it, fine. There's also the condition that he says the task force has to be looking for the real Batman, because again, he's totally convinced that Bruce Wayne is still alive. And the issue ends with Yip being told by somebody, we don't know who, on the phone, to kill everybody, to kill the Gotham elite that's going to be at this circus that's happening in a few days. So do you feel, because you kind of read some of the Detective before Convergence and all that happened, so do you feel like this is different in any way, or are we kind of experiencing a continuation of the same?
It definitely has a different tone, I think. It feels to me like a sort of a natural progression from where it was before. I don't feel like it's a completely different thing. I'm not sure if I like it better or worse, to be honest. But
well, what exactly do you feel is different?
I would say it has less of maybe the noir undertones that it had before. The previous storyline that we saw was very almost the animated series feel to it.
Yeah, Batman
right?
the animated series.
Right?
Yep.
Like I really got a strong animated series vibe, and now I feel like they're sort of pushing away from that. I really like Harvey in this series. I like the way they write Harvey. I think he's by far the most compelling thing happening in this comic.
Yeah, definitely. I would even say that at this point, Harvey is the basis for the label of Detective Comics.
Yeah, he is the detective of Detective Comics.
In my mind, like, Detective Comics should be all about Batman just being extra intellectual, like taking it to that level where he's on like a 12-issue arc trying to solve one case and just being, you know, a total dick to Alfred.
Sure.
You know, and
and
all that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So this is definitely different from that. And, you know, given that, you know, Batman just died and everything, so we can't expect a ton of involvement on his part, but it's really pretty minimal as far as his involvement in this comic whatsoever.
Yeah. they're really pushing for like a Gotham Central vibe. You know, it's all Gotham PD. That seems to be what this is all about, which is definitely a different take on it. It sort of combines, you know, because for a while, like you said, Batman and Detective Comics were becoming very similar. You know, it was just a slightly different tone, a different feel in one versus the other. Sort of just two different people's takes on Batman.
Right.
So I like this direction in general. I'm not sure I like it that much in its current form, but I like where they're going with it, and I think long term, this is a good idea for the franchise or the name Detective Comics.
And speaking of franchising, you know, with really playing up these characters like Bullock and Gordon and stuff like that, I mean, it's only going to do favors for the TV universe.
Yeah, it's I feel
without
like,
being directly related to the TV, because this isn't Gotham the comic.
No,
you know, like
no,
we
it's
have
definitely not.
Arrow the season the comic, or Flash the season the comic.
Right.
You know, this is Detective Comics. It has. It doesn't even have Gotham in the name. Yeah.
Right, and it's a totally different Harvey. It's a different Gordon. Yeah, I'm kind of on the edge with this one just in general. The art, to me, the way the art is presented feels kind of low effort, to be honest. It feels like DC Comics 101.
I guess I could agree and disagree on that. I thought the colorist did an awesome job. I like how in a lot of the pages, it's almost like there's a slightly different palette for each page or each couple pages, but they all are cohesive with that sort of historically correct Batman palette of gray and black and maybe a little bit of white, you know, but only for a reverse shadow or shiny kind of effect.
There's touches of purple to dark blue.
Right.
That kind of wash through that range.
Yeah, but in this, I mean, you see shadows of like green, you know, and light blue and stuff like that. And I think it's great. As far as the artwork itself, it's status quo. I think it is appropriate.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not special. It's not awful.
Right.
But it's not special.
There were some really good moments, a few pages that I really liked. I liked early on where we're moving back and forth from Gordon in the bat suit and Harvey with Yip in the bed in the old classic silhouette of them, you know, embracing and with her, you know, in the bed with him. It had its moments.
Right. And one thing I do kind of want to commend them for is, we've talked about this a little bit outside of this context, but the style of the art before Convergence was easily likened to their work on The Flash.
Yeah.
It felt a lot like that. And that really did quite a disservice to the comic. Because with The Flash, you know, and it totally works with The Flash, just everything reads fast. Even when you have good little bits of stuff to read, you know, you find yourself kind of like rushing through it, and it's this whole like brain trick of like becoming the fastest man alive as you're reading about the fastest man alive, and it's beautiful. You know, Detective, it doesn't have the same kind of charm to it, so they have pulled it back on that, and I think you know, it definitely worked out. That being said, the drawings themselves, yes.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of line work. It's sort of almost sloppy at times, which again, every time it comes back to Harvey, that sloppy look is perfect, you know.
Right.
He's disheveled, you know, he's got the chins, you know, that's just sort of halfway in there with the stubble just sort of dropped in, which, so anytime Harvey's on the page, I feel like the art's doing a really great job of giving that classic Harvey Bullock
blob of bad beard.
Yeah, just tired and bloodied up. You know, he's always sort of beat up looking. Looks like he's spent too much time out for the night.
I also love it when a character looks like they smell. Harvey just looks like he would have a smell about him.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
The bar fight that happened, as sort of fun as it probably was to write, I felt like it was just service to themselves. It felt sort of low bar.
Bad setup, bad execution. I guess they felt that they needed another action sequence or something like that. But it really didn't aid the story at all.
I feel like they're setting up some sort of tension between Yip and Montoya, which I'm just never into. It feels like one of these false love triangle things that just isn't gonna play out to me.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
You know, with Yip being uncomfortable with the fact that he has this other woman that he's very friendly with. At least that's
admires
the vibe.
on some level.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got. You know, they were at the park and she gets up and leaves while I'm leaving, and I'm, come on, I don't need that in Detective Comics with Harvey.
Yeah.
Harvey Bullock.
Yeah,
This is Harvey Bullock. And I'd be remiss not to mention the horrendous advertising that they're putting in all three of these books actually today.
Yeah.
It
See if I can find that.
Intensely jarring. Detective Comics is traditionally so sort of dark and brooding. And then right in the middle, what do we get? We get Nick Lachey Twix, right? Two full pages of Nick Lachey eating a Twix, right in a pretty somber part of the book too. Just like there's just no thought, like they just don't even care. It's like if you were to stop an episode of Game of Thrones right in the middle and just do like a douche commercial. It just doesn't. It's just so out of place. I don't understand it. It's not worth it, DC. Don't do this. All right, next on our list today we have Batman number 41. This is written by Scott Snyder, drawn by Capullo. We also have Miki doing the inks and Placentia doing the coloring on this one. So, how'd this go?
Okay, so this one starts out immediately in a fight between Mecha Batman and this large sort of energy creature that's attacking Little Cuba, if I recall. We see Gordon trying to sort of get in the mindset of Batman. He's repeatedly telling himself, like, don't think Jim thoughts. Like, you're Batman now. You only think Bat thoughts. Bat thoughts is
Bat
big.
thoughts, yeah.
It just keeps coming up. They have this big Zeppelin that's, like, encircling the city now, and it has this bat signal on the bottom. And what they're doing is whenever they need to send Mecha Batman into battle, they just shine the light wherever he needs to go, and then he'll swoop out of the bottom and land and, you know, sort of take care of business, so to speak. So then in the middle of that fight, again, we have a flashback to 3 months prior, I believe, and really just sort of a lot of deliberation about the whole idea of the police Batman. You know, what it means, if it's a good idea. I think they mentioned that Batman himself would hate it, would, you know, not have it whatsoever, which I think is pretty accurate. So then it goes on, you know, sort of a lot of different stages of deliberation, you know, Gordon talking to his boss, you know, his friends, the people that designed the suit. It cuts back to the fight scene, and they find out that the energy guy is being controlled by a man named Precious of the Whisper Gang. Possibly the most masculine sounding.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being in the Whisper Gang on top of that. It's like little precious secrets. They do a little, you know, light detective work to determine where this guy is hiding out and controlling this energy monster from, determine, you know, what he's trying to steal from a bank. The last page, it ends with Bruce Wayne possibly being recognized on a park bench. Possibly.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to point out the first page begins with Bruce Wayne on the park bench.
Does it?
It does.
I missed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a full page of him sitting in the park bench, but it's all in silhouette, so you can't tell until you get to the end.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
First of all, with this, I think the show was stolen by Snyder, and of all people, Placentia, the guy doing the coloring.
Oh my God! Yeah, I have that too. The colorist.
Just beautiful work.
Beautiful. And the thing that I really like about him is, again, the whole bat palette is just shot to shit. And that's not even fair. The whole bat palette is honored, but not the law of the land. So
slavishly adhered to.
Right. There is bright ass pink in this comic.
Yeah, a lot of the pastels are just gorgeous. It's
bright
such a
green.
Strange choice, but they really work.
That's been pretty consistent, I feel, throughout a lot of this. A lot of the 0-year issues were the same thing. You know, a lot of it happened in daytime, and it was very bright, and, you know, everything was sort of overgrown with the plantation and stuff like that because it was all broken up. And yeah, he does an awesome job. It definitely feels different than your typical Bat comic just based off the colors.
Overall, with this issue, the bad guy, the story, the detective work that's being done, it's just there to move the setup for Gordon as Batman along. It's unnecessary, but necessary. You know, if we would have gotten, you know, the Penguin or Joker or somebody like that in here, it really would have gotten in the way of what was going on. So I thought that was a really good choice. At first it feels like an odd choice, you know, to give him such a sort of softball problem to deal with. But this is one of those comics where the problem that he's dealing with regarding what to punch isn't really the problem of the issue, right?
Right.
The issue's about Jim Gordon trying to decide how to be Batman, you know, and if he should at all be Batman.
They have to introduce a bunch of new stuff, but you still want to see him in action.
Sure.
You know, this is, you know, the primary vehicle for this whole Mecha Bat idea, and we've been shown this suit and teased, you know, in Free Comic Book Day. We definitely want to see what he can do, but I agree that a main villain right off the bat is just, it would have been too much.
It shows Snyder's ability to sort of gauge his work and come up with those right decisions, even when they maybe feel like an odd choice, because here's Gordon in action as Batman, basically for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you would think most writers would go with, well, let's put him up against a heavy hitter and show how awesome he is, or show him fail miserably. You know, they would want to just go with this sort of action-based storytelling. You know?
Yes, that would be the Jeff Johns approach.
Right, and so I'm really happy that Snyder took this absolute opposite approach, where the villain of the week is just that. It's just backdrop for what the story really is. Now, that being said, I do feel disappointed by the reveal. The fact that we have Batman already, we have Bruce Wayne, he's still there. I feel like this entire issue undermines itself by the end.
It definitely cheapens everything that they've accomplished by already putting the end in sight.
Right.
And it's a bit unfortunate.
Right, which at the same time, this is Batman number 41. We know Batman's got to come back. They're not going to drop Bruce Wayne out of here this fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's comics, you know, so everybody's going to come back, but, I mean, leave a little bit of mystery.
Yeah.
You know.
At least don't let us know that he's just at the park.
Right, with a beard. What a disguise, bro.
Big change.
Yeah,
He's got a beard now.
Secret identity.
Otherwise, the Gordon monologues were fantastic. I really enjoyed them.
I hope we see more of that in the coming issues, too. I hope his internal struggle with becoming the Batman is the focal point of this story arc.
And it has been so far.
It has been so far.
So hopefully they continue to explore that. And obviously, in long term, he's going to decide it was a bad idea, but the whole point is, I guess, to see how that comes about.
So how would you describe Scott Snyder's take on Batman as a whole? Like, what kind of vibe do you get from it that's different than Detective Comics?
Well, I mean, I've always said Snyder writes like he's writing a film. You know, he's writing a movie that you get to read as a comic, which has its pluses, it has its minuses. Personally, I feel like he's missing opportunities a lot of times to use the medium to its fullest, but this one is not as far in that direction as I've seen in the past. I think this is going a little more into a more classic comic narrative.
Yeah, in-game I feel was very, very cinematic. Even, I mean, as I was reading it, I could hear that sort of orchestral Batman music in the back of my mind that's real, like, heavy on the cellos, you know, and like a bunch of boom sounds and stuff like that. It's just very intense, and it does draw you in. It draws you in very heavy. And I think Capullo is how I'm going to pronounce his name. Definitely aids in that. The way he draws is the way that people wish that they could film.
Yeah,
Period. And that's why I think they're such a great team. Like, they just get each other. They know what they're both trying to accomplish.
So for the last comic we have this week, we're going to be talking about Catwoman, also number 41. This one is written by Valentine. We have art by Messina and color by Lowridge. So what happened in Catwoman this week?
Prior to this, she found out who her father was. He was sort of the head of a syndicate of a bunch of different crime families. They all sort of worked under him. And in that, Selina really gives up the Catwoman persona, period. We don't really see it until the annual when somebody else actually dons the garb, because they feel that there's a void in Gotham now that she's gone. But that whole series, or that whole story arc, is just very into business. Just crime family dealing with business, and it's awesome. And this is definitely a continuation of that, but ironically, it starts out the first scene, she is Catwoman again. And it's pretty clever what she does. Everybody's making drop-offs to Sionis Black Mask. Falcone goes and he makes his drop, and then Selina steals the money, replaces it with sequential bills so they can't spend any of it because the police can track it, and then kind of makes it look sloppy so nobody can tell that she did it. So technically she didn't steal anything. She basically just screwed with them, which I think is brilliant. I love it when she does clever little things like that. So shortly after that, we find out that her and Penguin are working together on something. Cut to later, Falcone is trying to come back to the Calabrese syndicate. In light of everything that happened with the money being replaced and stuff like that, the break-in, I think as they refer to it, he doesn't really feel that he's getting everything that he wanted to from Sionis. He feels that he's still vulnerable, he's very impulsive. The phrase that he uses is Sionis is bad for business. She dons the Catwoman garb again. She goes out to find out what happened to Batman, and expresses a lot of distaste for the idea of the police Batman. She's not into it at all. There's a lot of scenes of her just standing and staring at the Zeppelin and just being like disgusted by it. Sionis thinks it's great because he has police on the payroll, and now he feels like he has a Zeppelin in the sky that he can just point wherever he wants, and there's Mechabat to do all his dirty work. So what was your favorite thing about this?
I would have to say there's some moments with the art that I really liked. There were flashes of what I felt was really brilliant work that I don't know if they just didn't have time or if those flashes were things that they would have rather not done. I'm not sure what happened here, but they've done this thing with like the outlining, with these very thick, bold lines, and these interesting like grid patterns and things behind them that I don't think I've really seen, at least not in quite a while that I can think of it. Some of the moments almost reminded me of the first run of Powers, with just these sort of thick, bold lines, but then nice line work inside of it. Honestly, this is like the first in a new story arc, right? This is...
Basically, it's still a continuation of what we had before, and it's the same creative team, I believe. I know at least the writer is the same, Genevieve Valentine, which is why I wanted to continue on with this series, because she really, I think, is knocking it out of the park.
Well, here's the thing. This is the first one I've read, and I felt lost most of the way through it, to be perfectly honest with you. The writing seems really interesting and very involved, but I don't feel like they've done a very good job of bringing a new reader like me in. As I read it, a lot of times they're just throwing names. It's like they're pulling names out of a hat and just tossing them over their shoulder as they go, and I don't know who any of these people are. I don't have any frame of reference for what's going on.
Right.
I don't even know this other Catwoman that shows up. I don't know who this is. They don't say her name. They don't mention her. They don't explain what's going on. And is Selina gay?
She is dating the new Catwoman.
Is she
They have a thing.
bi? What's going on there? I thought she had...
There's always been a lot of... they deal with sexuality a lot in Catwoman comics. And I don't just mean like her banging Batman, or her banging like anybody necessarily. Even in the old school Brubaker Catwoman, which, is still my favorite to this day.
Which we will get to.
We will get to. She, I think within the first 5 issues or so, has a friend that she finds out is a lesbian.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was I think 2002 or so when that came out. So I mean, it was really kind of ahead of its time as far as like discussing that sort of thing in comics or really any other sort of media. To think the only other thing that was really doing anything with that was like Will and Grace. I think maybe
in comics, all I can think of is Apollo and Midnighter. That's the only other example that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. And Will and Grace just made gay jokes the whole time, so I mean, it was kind of like the homophobe's dream show. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like Big Bang for gay people, right? Same kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with Catwoman. This is I've read a few pieces here and there, but this is really my first jump in where I'm going to be in it for the long haul, reading it.
Right.
And I feel like it's going to take me a couple of issues probably to catch up and catch on to what's going on.
Definitely.
And this even feels like an issue where if I read a few more, I'll probably come back and read it again. Because it did seem to have a lot of weight to it and a lot going on that was just going directly over my head.
Again, a call back to the Brubaker Catwoman. I think that Genevieve definitely did her homework on the character. I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't a huge fan, because even as I'm hearing you sort of like talk about what you didn't like about it, that's pretty much every Brubaker comic that's ever been written. And I mean, if she's trying to pay tribute to, again, my favorite Catwoman by writing more in the style of that author, she definitely has her own touch to it. I wouldn't call it painting with somebody else's colors by any means, but definitely the more sort of long form involved Catwoman story that's not just the cheap Harley Quinn-esque not even necessarily a villain or a plot kind of stuff.
This feels like it's written by a woman.
Yeah.
I get the impression that this is somebody who understands women and can actually write them as a full character and not as sort of a caricature, which a lot of Catwoman books have been accused of. Because it's usually written by men. She's usually presented as a little bit of a sex symbol.
Right.
And that's really toned down here. She's sexy, but she's sexy in more of a womanly sort of way.
Right.
She feels in control of herself in here, which I do like about the writing here.
Actually, I was about to drop the series when Anne Nocenti was writing for it, because it was exactly what you described. She's a woman, obviously, she was writing it, but it was totally like, I mean, you just had just shiny black spandex butt on like every cover, and she, like, I think her and Batman had sex on like the second issue or something like that, and they gave her a good long run, and I mean, while she did have some story development and stuff like that, it just wasn't ever deep.
Sure.
It was all contrived. It all felt very contrived. This creative team took over Catwoman number 35. The first cover is her in a pantsuit, beautifully drawn. And I think that really just set the tone for the transition between how Catwoman had been being done and how Catwoman is being done now, beautifully. But definitely I would recommend starting at 35 if you're going to pick up the series, and try to not feel lost at 41.
Yeah, as would I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As somebody who did it.
Yeah. Tough read. But again, it does feel like it has a lot in there that I'm just not privy to.
One of my favorite things about this comic, and we don't see it as much in this issue as we did to the stuff just prior to Convergence. I'm hoping it'll come back more because it was my favorite thing. It's just the little excerpts of correspondence from historical figures and stuff like that. Like there's a bit of a letter to Caesar, I think, and this. Who else is in there? Catherine the Great, I want to say, is somebody that's been referenced before. Queen Elizabeth, and it's not ever anything super obvious. It's always something sort of like a concept or something that's introduced, and then over time you kind of reflect on it. And even then, it's not 100% clear. You sort of take away your own meaning from it. And I think that's really great. I haven't seen that in any comic ever.
Did Why the Last Man have a little bit of that? I thought it did. I thought it had some like Tolstoy and a few other things quoted in it.
I could see Yorick quoting them.
That may be what I'm
But
thinking.
I don't remember like little text
just
box.
literally quoted within the comic itself.
totally
Probably.
unbeknownst to the characters within the con.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our episode for June 10th. I have to look at the card to see what the date was. We will be back next week with 3 more choices, maybe 4, depending.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content today. And go ahead and comment down below if there's anything you'd like us to review, anything you'd like us to talk about. If you have a great comment, maybe we'll talk about it next time. Thanks a lot.